Florida, the state that brought the 2000 presidential election to a crawl. The races for Senate and governor both now appear to be headed for recounts. Returns coming in from Broward County have pushed Democrats Andrew Gillum and Senator Bill Nelson closer to their Republican opponents, Ron DeSantis and Governor Rick Scott. In the race for Senate, just over 15,000 votes now separate Rick Scott and Bill Nelson. The difference is less than a quarter of a point. Under Florida law, a margin smaller than half a point triggers a machine recount, and if the margin falls below a quarter of a point, a more thorough manual recount takes place. An attorney for Senator Nelson predicted he eventually would win, telling the Orlando Sentinel, "We believe at the end of the day, Senator Nelson is going to be declared the winner and return to the U.S. Senate." In Broward County, more than 24,000 people voted for a gubernatorial candidate but did not vote for a Senate candidate. A common theory is that some voters missed the contest because of how the ballot was designed. The Senate race was at the bottom left corner, away from the races that got more votes. But with his lead appearing to shrink, Governor Rick Scott has now filed a lawsuit against both that Broward County Supervisor of Elections and the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections, demanding access to ballots there. He's accusing election officials in both counties of, quote, rampant fraud, and has ordered Florida's Department of Law Enforcement to investigate.
We've all seen the incompetence and the irregularities in vote tabulations in Broward and Palm Beach for years. Well, here we go again. I will not sit idly by while unethical liberals try to steal this election from the great people of Florida. Every day since the election, the left-wing activists in Broward County have been coming up with more and more ballots out of nowhere. We all know what is going on. Every person in Florida knows exactly what is happening. Their goal is to keep mysteriously finding more votes until the election turns out the way they want.
That is the governor of the state. Last night, President Trump weighed in on Twitter, writing, "Law enforcement is looking into another big corruption scandal having to do with election fraud in Broward and Palm Beach. Florida voted for Rick Scott." Meanwhile, Florida Senator Marco Rubio also weighed in on Twitter, writing in part, "Democrat lawyers are descending on Florida. They have been very clear they aren't here to make sure every vote is counted. They are here to change the results of the election. And Broward is where they plan to do it." And President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, pointing the blame at Hillary Clinton.
Oh, my God.
Come on.
Rudy wrote this: "Hillary's lawyers trying to steal Florida election. They are still counting or creating ballots just in Democratic Broward and Palm Beach."
Seriously, can you believe where this guy has gone?
Where has he been, by the way?
And where is he now? Can you believe how much he has tarnished his reputation? America's mayor. The guy that guided this city after 9/11. He's just humiliating himself every day. And everything he says ends up being false. He gets booed at Yankee Stadium. I didn't know that's how he wanted to, it's like, as a public figure. So, Susan, you actually have Republicans, Marco Rubio, in the fevered swamp of conspiracy theories. You talk about Trumpism. Actually saying, and Rick Scott and Donald Trump, they're all arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder, saying that it's a conspiracy for every vote to be counted. Again, I will restate the Bush recount, at least what we were doing in Northwest Florida, we were fighting like hell to make sure every military vote got counted. That's what we were trying to do. And it was the Democratic lawyers back then that were trying to stop that. I know. I was there for 38 long days, and we made sure every vote was counted. 18 years later, Marco Rubio actually wants to make sure that Florida citizens' votes aren't counted. Rick Scott's freaking out. He doesn't want ballots to be counted. Donald Trump, this is third.
Can you be a little less obvious?
This is third world country stuff coming from the Republican Party, who I would think, if they wanted to be consistent with 2000, would be fighting to get every vote counted.
They would, and for 30 years I've been working with Republicans. They're always, when they're behind and it's this close, they're always fighting for that recount. So this is, it's just ludicrous that they would change it. But what's also, when you look back to Donald Trump in 2016, is that he has been questioning the integrity of our elections. And that's what scares me, is that these comments that they're making have been brought out by the president over time. And now he's calling on law enforcement to make sure that this conspiracy theory doesn't exist when it's the same law enforcement that he didn't believe when they said that the Russians were involved in our election. So he really just tries to muddle the waters, and it's very scary for a democracy.
Well, they got nothing. Sometimes close elections, Eugene, take 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
5 days. It's happening in Arizona.
Right.
And it's happening in Florida. And they're just angry because the votes are coming from Maricopa County and Broward County. It's that simple. They are trying to stop the votes from being counted. I'll say it. They're trying to stop my vote from being counted. I cast an absentee ballot. They don't want that to be counted. Or people like me who handed in an absentee ballot at the last minute. I mean, that's Marco Rubio's idea of democracy?
Yeah, you were just talking about integrity of elections. I used to cover politics in Maricopa County and have spent this week talking to voters in Atlanta and in Miami, and they have questions and concerns about the integrity of all of these elections. One thing a lot of people aren't talking about is voter suppression and the efforts to keep certain votes from being counted, to keep certain people from casting their ballot. The long lines, 3-hour waits in Florida, people were turned away. Some people believe that their ballots were changed or things weren't clear. You talk about the ballots being on different pages and people just did not know what was going on.
Eugene, what about Georgia, where if the Georgia election were held in the country of Georgia instead of the state of Georgia, the United States State Department would be protesting. Brian Kemp was doing it in the light of day. Before the election, we were hearing about Gwinnett County, an incredibly important county, not just for the governor's race, because it's the suburbs of Atlanta, but also for Handel's race. What do we see? The machines break down. In Gwinnett County, people have to wait 3-4 hours in Gwinnett County. And Kemp, he keeps himself in charge like some third world dictator. I'm running my own elections.
And he was doing it with the support of Donald Trump. And this is why his approval ratings are so low with black voters, are so low with Latino voters, are so low with millennial voters, are so low with women voters, people who would have voted against him. And he wants trust, he wants confidence. He asked on Twitter, why don't these communities trust me? It's this type of thing. When people who have fought for the opportunity to participate in an election feel like they can't trust the results and they can't count on their government leaders to back them up, this is why you get this type of reaction.
And this is why the Republican Party is going completely down the drain in a lot of ways, because we're not expanding our base, because no one wants to join us, as you mentioned earlier, Joe. And now we have the reputation of trying to suppress votes and not
scare people.
And scare people. This is just a really bad formula.
It's a dipsy doodle. One, the dipsy is suppress the vote. And the dipsy doodle, the doodle is don't count the votes that manage to get in there.
And that's not good for a two-party system.
This round is sowed to you by Donald Trump.
Well, and
this is what he does.
You know, Mika, again, I'll say it again, 18 years ago, especially in Northwest Florida, we held a huge rally at the Escambia County Courthouse. We marched about 3,000 people into the county commissioners, where only about 100 people were supposed to fit. And we all stared at the county commissioners while they were deciding whether they were going to count the ballots of the men and women who served in the armed forces overseas. And we had one simple principle: count every vote. That's where the Republican Party stood 18 years ago. Now Marco Rubio and Donald Trump and Rick Scott, where do they stand? You know what?
On the side
Only
of winning,
count our
no matter
votes.
what.
Don't count the vote. Marco Rubio is what disappoints me the most, that he's concocting a conspiracy theory. For what? For what? Why? Why does he want to damage his reputation for the benefit of Donald Trump?
And his future, because
he
had one. Still ahead on Morning Joe, Brett Kavanaugh and Donald Trump seem to share the same views on executive power. Now the president has a loyalist in charge of the Justice Department as Matthew Whitaker takes over.
Have you heard this guy? By the way, he got busted in a scam, right? They got this. The FTC said that guy was involved in a scam, right? And he's still there. He went on CNN, said some outrageous things. He is a conspiracy theorist who doesn't believe that the Russians were involved at all in trying to hack the election. I mean, even the White House is freaking out, which leads to the question, why did you appoint this clown in the first place?
Well, I mean, it would lead to a lot of questions that might be answered.
Oh, one other thing.
Yeah.
Kellyanne Conway's husband, who is a constitutional scholar in his own right, a brilliant mind, whether you agree or disagree with him, saying, hey, this appointment's unconstitutional.
So we'll talk to his co-author, co-writer on this issue, Acting Solicitor General Neil Katyal, who calls Whitaker's appointment unconstitutional. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.